Melacha is a mission or work, but again, this doesn't give you a lot of nuance, right? So this is like the work of the tabernacle, for instance. So usually this is some kind of like handiwork, okay? But it can be like a mission or a service that one does. So we have to kind of keep that with an open hand as well. Melechet is the construct form. Again, you could, like choma turns to chomat. So if you wanted to say the work of the priests, right? You would say melechet hakohanim, the work of the priests. If you said melechet kohanim, it would be work of priests or a work of priests. This is not works or missions in this form. Okay, again, this is one of the downsides of Quizlet, and I like to go through Quizlet with you guys because I know that a lot of you are using it, and you're using other people's work if you're not typing in yourself, and they often make mistakes because they're human and they're prone to make mistakes. Na'um is oracle. So this will be like in the prophets, Na'um Yud He Vav He, right? Like the oracle or the oration of the Lord. Sefer is a book, a scroll, a letter. It's like a written document, okay? And this is a good place to talk about how you get from the masculine singular to the masculine plural construct form. So in the masculine singular here, you have sefer, right, or sefer, and that is, let's just say, a book for now, right? It's easy to use just that, a book. And then sfarim is the masculine plural, not too much. I mean, you have some vowel reduction, what's called the proprotonic reduction there in this guy, because of the addition of the yod mem on the end. Sfarim now, and then what happens is, again, when you get into the masculine plural construct, the mem falls away, okay? And because you can't have two vocalic schwas one after the other, it goes from what would be sifre to sifre, right? Again, this is euphony. This is nothing more than euphony, aka people like to say things that sound good. It's confusing only because there's not necessarily a logic to it other than these kinds of things in that ancient culture they deemed to sound better than other things. And there are, of course, some linguistic similarities when you compare it to other languages, especially cognates, but not our job right now. Aida is a congregation, right? So if you wanted to say the congregation of Israel, how would you say that? It would go from Eda to Edat, right? Eda to Edat, and then the Israel, okay? Edat Israel, the congregation of Israel in the wilderness, for instance. Right? Afar is dust. Son is a flock, okay? I forget the small cattle. This is, I don't know. It's funny to me, some of these definitions. Okay, it's best to think of son as a grouping of animals, a flock, and it's almost always a flock of sheep and goats intermingled. Although it can just be sheep or it can just be goats, it's usually a flock that includes sheep. Okay? Sava. Sava is an army, like the host of soldiers, right? So troops, so to speak. Tzivaot then would be armies, yeah, in the plural, and yes, you've got an irregular plural there. This is where we get the term the Yahweh or Lord of Sabaoth, if you've seen that in kind of old translations, especially the King James, right? Like the Lord Sabaot, they would often put. And so, you grow up in church and you're like, well, that's just a funky way to spell Sabbath. I don't know why they said Lord of the Sabbath that way. It's not Lord of the Sabbath. It's Lord of Armies, Lord of Angelic Armies. So it has a bit more of a grave meaning there. Tavich is a sort of abstract word that means midst. You'll almost never see it this way. You will usually see it this way, like betoch, like in the midst of. Right? I don't know why that's not working right now, but it's not. There we go. Betoch. So in the middle of, or mitoch, from the midst of. Shuv is a verb which means to return. Right. So this is the idea of repentance is taken from this word shuv, to turn around. You've often heard that. Az, then. Me'az would be from or since then. Kol, very, very important word. All, every, each, the whole. Mikol. So this is the comparative aspect that we talked about before. The comparative use of mem with kol is the most something or other, right? So we've seen this maybe in Genesis chapter 3, where it says that the serpent, the nachash, is the craftiest of all the beasts, right? I mean, you can get there yourself, but let's just see. This is very small right now. So והנחש היה ערום מכל חיית השדה. He was more crafty than all the other animals. Okay, that's vocab for 11.